you can't keep playing the game with the dollar forever. So there needs to be an end game, and where they've wanted to go for a long time is regional and then world currencies. And and the reality is, if you think you can steal a lot with the dollar, where do you see what you can do with a global currency, particularly a digital one?
So the plan from the beginning, as I understand it, you just alluded to it, was first go to the regional currency they are calling the Amero, which would be the currency of the new nation composed of the United States, Mexico, and Canada, and then move on from there to the international currency.
Yeah, I don't know if the plan for the Amero, will happen. I don't know if it's real, but what I do know is that, they want a North America Union as they want a European Union, and then a globalized world government. So, and obviously the way to have a world government or to have a North American Union is through the currency and the regulatory system, and that's happening. And if you look at how we're now governed, Alan, essentially there is no democracy and there are no markets. So you have the Treasury and the Federal Reserve free to shift $12 to $14 trillion of lending authority or basically gifts into a small handful of banks within a year and a half, and you have complete. You have elections where the people who get elected don't reflect the popular will. You have all sorts of regulations that don't affect the popular will. It was interesting. Somebody sent me a poll last week to go to USA Today and vote about the right to bear firearms. And I think the question was, do you think I guess it's the Second Amendment? Is it the Second Amendment? I'm showing my ignorance, Alan.
Yes,
anyway,
the Second Amendment, the right to keep and bear arms. Second Amendment,
the Constitution gives you the right to bear arms. And I voted, I was about the one of 86,000 after 2 million. So it's a little bit more than 2 million voted. 96% said yes.
Said yes. What?
96% said yes, and we're seeing this. These situations where you have 85, 90, 95%, 100% of the American people wanting to go to the right, and of course Congress going to the left. So so these things have they're already operating. It's operating that way. So it's here. It's the financial coup d'état has been engineered. That piece is over. So it's So
in other words, what you're saying when you say it's been engineered, what we are seeing happen, this horrific fiscal disaster, was done to us deliberately. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't spontaneous. It didn't come out of deep space. It was done deliberately by people with names, addresses, faces, and telephone numbers.
Utah Phillips once said, the planet is not dying. The planet is being destroyed, and the people who are destroying it have names and addresses. So the people who are doing this, there's a plan. There are people who are doing it. I've written a wonderful article called Dylan Reed and the Aristocracy of Stock Profits, and if you go to my website at Solari.com blog, or Solari.com, you can link to it. And what it talks about is the fact that the debt bubble really was fraudulent inducement. In other words, we knew Americans could not afford to take on or pay back this debt, and we knew the incomes were going to drop and the jobs were being moved abroad. And in fact, I was part of a wonderful group of people who had all sorts of plans and proposals on how we could pay down our debt and revitalize small business and community venture capital so that the middle class wouldn't get wiped out and the pension funds wouldn't lose money on all this fraud. And that was rejected very forcefully. In other words, I was targeted and tormented out of, it's not unlike our mutual ally Franklin Sanders' story. So a great deal of effort and dirty tricks were used to get the honest people out of government or government contracting posts so that they could do this kind of stuff. So a great deal of time and effort was put in to engineer this financial coup d'etat, which is really the bankrupting and wiping out of a lot of middle-class America. And it was a plan.
I'm wondering, Catherine Austin Fitts, are you able to put your finger for us on the organizations and the people at the top who are implementing this thing, who are at the very top of this? You have to call it a conspiracy. I can't imagine what else you could call it.
Well, it's many conspiracies, and
Let's take a quick break. We'll do some more business, and then we'll come right back to Catherine Austin Fitts with much more. Stay with us.
Once again, Alan Stang.
What I'm getting at, Catherine Austin Fitts, is that obviously people like Barney the Bugger Frank, Helicopter Ben Bernanke, Little Timmy Geithner, these people are two-bit frontmen hired to implement the plans of the people above them, the people who hired them. Who are those people?
Well, your guess is as good as mine. In my experience, you have intergenerational pools of capital, which are represented by a variety of different families, but become cultures of their own and sort of risk positions of their own. And then you have a whole series of corporations and foundations and endowments and other organizations, and they have cross-cutting groups like the Council on Foreign Relations, which are a way of sort of communicating and managing, and you have a variety of committees, and interwoven through that you have all sorts of secret societies that go back hundreds of years and have been governing this country for hundreds of years, and have remarkable continuity.
So you're describing the conspiracy, and you're talking about families.
But it's not a conspiracy. It's hundreds and hundreds of organizations and groups that have evolved. It's very organic, and their job is to manage and govern and own resources. And that's what they, and it's evolved over centuries as they grapple with how to do that. And they don't practice just there are hundreds of conspiracies. Everything's kind of conspiracy is just people. It's from the Greek to breathe together.
Exactly.
But it's people who get together and plan and whatever. And if you look at the formal mechanisms of the governmental bureaucracy, increasingly that is not the mechanism that's it's used to implement a lot of stuff, but it's not the decision-making body, and the policy conversations around government are not the policy-making decisions. In other words, those decisions are made privately. And if you dig down into sort of where this is all going and why, you get a couple different questions. One is we've seen, Alan, over the centuries, tremendous amount of technology suppressed. And my guess is one is the fear that if that is not suppressed, it becomes that much harder to govern and manage the whole planet. And of course, with that technology suppression, you have tremendous suppression of knowledge. And of course, the more you suppress this stuff and the more you control it, the more, the more unproductive and sort of dysfunctional, the economy and sort of the way things are run becomes. So that's part of it. The other thing we see is a decision clearly has been made many decades ago to shift ownership and control of resources out of sovereign governments and into corporations. Now, why is a question I can't answer, but we've watched a process for 20 years where assets are being moved out of governmental ownership at below market value, and then liabilities are being moved back in for free. So we're sticking all our financial and legal toxic waste in governments and pulling out all the gems.